Good evening. As Dr. Ziegenfuss mentioned, Public School Code requires that the first week of December, the school board of directors has their reorganization meeting. Every other year, when they're after an election, we would swear in new board members. And then a non-election year, you would also do your election of your vice president and president for the year, and a few other housekeeping items, setting meeting dates for the school year, for your regular school board meetings, your operations committee meetings, and curriculum meetings. We also are setting up approving our depositories for the 2021 year, and then authorizing our signers on the bank accounts as well. So it's a standard practice, basically just for the organization of the school board for the following year. And so that's what we'll get started with tonight. With this being a non-election year for school board members, there is no swearing in of new members. So the organization meeting of the Board of School Directors for Salisbury Township School District will now come to order. Would everyone please stand and join in the pledge to the flag? Pledge allegiance
To the
to the
flag
flag of the United
of the
States
United
of
States of
America,
America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, as board secretary, I will now call the roll of the board. Mr. DeFrank,
Here.
Ms. Frick,
Here.
Mr. Gatanis,
Here.
Ms. Glenister,
Here.
Mr. Ganal,
Here.
Mr. Hattinger,
Here.
Ms. Klinger.
She's on mute.
You're on mute, Carol.
All right, well, we do see Ms. Klinger in attendance, so I will mark her as well. Ms. Nemitz
Here.
and Ms. Ziegler.
Here.
All right. So we do have a quorum. So welcome to members of the public and to our special guests. The purpose of the annual organization meeting is to organize the board for the coming year by electing a permanent president and vice president. As you can see from the agenda for the organization portion of this meeting, we will not take up regular legislative business of the board at this point. Immediately following the organization meeting this evening, we will convene a regular business meeting for that purpose. So we will be taking nominations for positions. They do not need to be seconded, and we can have as many nominations as necessary. The first order of business is to elect a temporary president to chair the organization meeting. May I have nominations for temporary president?
I nominate Mary Ziegler.
I second that.
Are there any further nominations? Okay, seeing none, and if there's no objection, I declare the nominations closed. We'll do a vote by voice vote, with each member stating the name of the nominee of their choice as the secretary calls the roll, and the secretary will record how each member votes. Are there any questions about the procedure? All right. As secretary, I will now call the roll. Mr. DeFrank,
Mary Ziegler.
Ms. Frick,
Mary Ziegler.
Mr. Gatanis,
Mary Ziegler.
Ms. Glenister,
Mary Ziegler.
Mr. Ganal,
Mary Ziegler.
Mr. Hattinger,
Mary Ziegler.
Ms. Klinger.
It looks like Carol's having some.
Yeah,
difficulties.
you are muted, Carol, but I don't know if that's what your problem is.
I don't think she can unmute.
Randy, can you unmute her?
See if I can. If I click on mute, nothing seems to happen.
All right, well, Carol, if you're voting for Mary, if you can just shake your head yes then.
Thumbs up. Give a thumbs up.
All right,
She's unmuted. She's unmuted.
Oh,
Oh, yeah, now you're.
But I can't see myself.
all right, but we can hear you now.
Okay.
All right, Ms. Nemitz
Mary Ziegler.
and Ms. Ziegler.
I guess myself. Yeah.
All right. All right. The vote is unanimous for Mary Ziegler, who is now temporary president, and I will now turn the chair over to Mary Ziegler as temporary president.
Thank you. I'll now open the floor for the nominations for the office of president.
I would like to nominate George Gatanis.
Mrs. Klinger has nominated Mr. Katanis for president. Do we have any other nominations for the office of president? Are there any other further nominations? Seeing none, if there's no objections, I now declare these nominations closed. Our board policy number 1C3 states that the election of an officer requires the winning candidate to receive a majority of the votes cast by those present and voting. Since there are 9 members present, 5 votes will be necessary to win. If everyone present casts a vote. Our policy also states that if no one receives sufficient votes on the first ballot, a runoff vote will be held between the 2 candidates who received the most votes in the first ballot. Do we have any questions for those procedures? Unless I have another motion to proceed differently, we will now vote for the candidates by voice vote. The secretary will call the roll, and each member will cast their vote when their name is called by stating the name of the candidate of their choice. The secretary will record those votes. Does everyone understand the procedure? Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. DeFrank,
George Katanis.
Ms. Frick,
George Katanis.
Mr. Gatanis.
I'd have to abstain, I guess.
All right. Ms. Glenister,
George Katanis.
Mr. Ganal,
George Katanis.
Mr. Hattinger,
George Katanis.
Ms. Klinger,
George Gatanis.
Ms. Nemitz,
George Katanis.
and Ms. Ziegler.
George Katanis. The secretary will please state the vote tally.
So the tally is 8 votes for George Katanis and 1 abstention.
The vote is unanimous in favor of Mr. Katanis, and he has been elected the president. Congratulations, Mr. Katanis.
Thank you, everybody.
I will now open the floor for nominations of vice president.
I'd like to nominate Sam DeFrank.
Mr. Katanis has nominated Mr. DeFrank for vice president. Are there any further nominations for office of the vice president? Seeing none, and if there's no objection, I will declare the nominations closed. As we did before, we will vote on the candidates for vice president by a voice vote. Please state the name of your candidate of choice as the secretary calls the roll.
All right, Mr. DeFrank,
I'll abstain.
Ms. Frick,
Sam DeFrank.
Mr. Katanis,
Sam DeFrank.
Ms. Glenister,
Sam DeFrank.
Mr. Ganal,
Sam DeFrank.
Mr. Hattinger,
Sam DeFrank.
Ms. Klinger,
Sam DeFrank.
Ms. Nemitz,
Sam DeFrank.
and Ms. Ziegler.
Sam DeFrank. The secretary will now please state the vote tally.
We have 8 votes for Sam DeFrank and 1 abstention.
Thank you. The vote is unanimous in favor of Mr. DeFrank as he has been elected the vice president.
Thank you,
Congratulations,
everyone. Sorry, Mary.
congratulations, Mr. DeFrank.
Thank you very much, Mary, and thank you, everyone else.
Thank you. I will now turn the meeting over to our new board president, Mr. Katanis, and thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Okay, that takes us to business for board action. That would be item 4.1 Fulton Bank. Mr. Taylor, is there any explanation you have to do regarding that, or do we just move everything?
So just annually, we appoint who the signers are on the bank account. And so one thing to note on there is Randy, Dr. Ziegenfuss, as superintendent, is on as a signer. And in the resolution, we have that his signer authority would expire on January 1st due to the retirement. And then Miss Lynn Funey-Hetton, who would be the new superintendent, effective January 2nd, would be a signer at that point.
Okay. All right, I just have a curiosity question. How many different banks do we deal with?
So Fulton Bank is our primary bank for the school district, but we have a few others like the Pennsylvania Local Government Investment Trust. We also have PIS to Laugh, and then PNC Bank is involved with PIS to Laugh. And then some other banks we do a little bit of business with, like US Bank for our bond issuances, but Fulton Bank is our primary bank.
Yeah, I might be living in a hole or something, but to tell the truth, I've never heard of that bank. Where are they out of?
Fulton Bank, it used to be the Lafayette Ambassador Bank.
Oh, okay. Okay, I got it.
Yeah, and they've been owned by Fulton for a number of years, and they just rebranded a number of their holdings as Fulton Bank recently.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, did you want to move on to 4.2? Is there anything to explain as far as 4.2?
It's just approving the local depositories again. And there's no changes from last year, except for last year it might have said Lafayette Ambassador, and now it's just Fulton Bank. But it's just approving them again to be remaining as depositories for the.
Okay, all right, thank you. That takes us to 4.3, regular school board meeting dates. Does anybody have any questions on that before we would move to vote on these items? Okay, seeing none, we have operations meeting committee dates. If anybody has any questions concerning them, they look fine to me, along with the curriculum and technology meeting dates, if anybody has any problems or any questions about that. Okay, that takes us to, if somebody can move items 4.1 through 4.5, that would be great.
I'll move that.
Okay, okay, thank you. Those in favor say aye. Any questions or comments? I already asked that question, but if anybody has any questions or comments, now's the time. Okay, seeing none, those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, that takes us to item 5.1, adjournment. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
So
I'll move
moved.
that.
Moved.
Okay, second. Okay, meeting adjourned.
Yeah.
I don't think the next meeting will go that quick.
No.
No.
So,
Okay,
Mr. Gatanis, it's 7:15. We do have in the special presentations, the Honorable Judge Reedman to come and swear Lynn in. He is not coming until 7:30, and that's in the special presentation section. So we can continue with the meeting, and then just when the judge gets here, we could jump to that part of the meeting, or you could take a little bit of a break to sort of time that specials around the time that he comes in. Your choice.
okay. If nobody needs a break, should we just, start with the meeting and we'll save the item 1.3 for when he comes?
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Okay with me.
Okay, great. All right, so I'd like to call this meeting to order, a regular board meeting, December 2nd, and welcome everybody. And pursuant to board policy 1B.5, all meetings of the Salisbury Township School District are audio and video recorded. The district disclaims any and all liability arising from the recording of meetings and for any statements made by those in attendance. Okay, so we'll go on here to item 1.2. We do not have any student representatives, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and we'll skip 1.3, and that takes us to 1.4. Do we have any changes or additions to the agenda? Okay, seeing none. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, that takes us to citizens' inquiries and comments pertaining to the agenda items. This here, we might have to stop short if 7:30 rolls around. Do we have anybody, Mr. Taylor?
Mr. Katanis, there's nobody signed up at this point.
Okay, great. Okay, another statement I want to make, we did have an executive session prior to this regular board meeting and the reorg meeting to go over legal and personnel issues which cannot be discussed in public. Okay, item 1.7, a motion to approve the following minutes, and that would be for the regular board meeting dated November 18th. Do I have a motion for that item?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Okay, second.
Second.
Okay, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. That takes us to 1.8, payment of bills. We have general fund expenditures, athletic expenditures, laptop account, and that's about it. So do I have a motion to approve those bills?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any questions concerning any of them? Okay, seeing none. Those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, I understand that we do not have a treasurer's report. Okay, report of the secretary of the board, Mr. Taylor.
No report tonight.
Okay, great. All right, that takes us to, okay, item 2.1. That's the curriculum committee, Mrs. Klinger.
I would like to move item 2.1, which is approval of a student teacher from DeSales University who would begin in February and work with Mr. Frick until May. And of course, it's tentative under the current situation. But I would like to move item 2.1, the approval of a student teacher from DeSales University.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Klinger. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any questions? Seeing none, those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, that takes us to the Operations Committee meeting. We have debt restructuring, debt refunding, which we've been talking about for quite a while now. Mr. Taylor's been explaining that to us, along with use of district facilities. I'll move that. And do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any questions concerning any of those items? Seeing none, those in favor say aye.
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 Those
Aye.
opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, Mrs. Ziegler, Personnel Committee line items.
Thank you. This is
You're welcome.
probably the shortest list we've seen in a number of months. For your approval tonight, I have items 4.1 through 4.5, which include a resignation of a part-time instructional assistant at the high school and an employment of an assistant middle school football coach for the season when and if that happens. And then we have 3 staff members who will be returning from their Family Care Act leave. And that's it for the night. So for your approval, I'd like to move 4.1 through 4.5.
Okay, do I have a second?
I can second that.
Okay, any questions for Mary? Okay, seeing none, those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Frick, I don't think we have anything referring to policy, correct?
Yeah, no new policies to read, George,
Okay, thank you.
or changes.
Okay, and we don't have any student activities to report on. Okay, that takes us to our committee reports. Carbon Lehigh Intermediate Unit, Mrs. Ziegler.
Thank you. I do not have report for tonight. We haven't had one since. My next meeting is in 2 weeks, so there's nothing to report from the IU.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Okay, that takes us to the LCCC, Mr. DeFrank.
Yes, this is going to sound a little redundant, but my meeting is tomorrow, luck of the calendar. So I have nothing to report at this time.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, Mrs. Nemitz, LCTI.
I just have a quick update. We had a meeting of the Committee of the Whole last Monday, a week ago, where we reviewed the audit of last year's finances and went over the budget for the current year. It was the first time that I had ever been involved in that type of a meeting, and it was unbelievably fascinating, if you can believe it. LCTI is projecting a 1.9% increase in their total budget for this coming year. And since the funding is contributed by sending districts, our contribution is going to go up a little bit. Last year, our contribution was just under $1 million. This year, our contribution will be just over $1 million. However, due to COVID in the 1920 school year, they didn't spend all of their budget. So we're going to get a credit on what we contributed last year that can be applied against this year's contribution. So I thought that was really interesting. There's a couple different areas of the school that we contribute to. We contribute to the technical school, the academic center, and I think there might have been one other. And when there is, extra money at the end of the year, depending on which area it is, they either keep 75% and return 25% or keep 25% and return 75%. So we're getting not the full amount of our sort of, I don't want to call it an overpayment, but whatever wasn't spent of our contribution back, but we're going to get a percentage of it. Not really back in our budget, but just as a credit on what we will give them for this current year. So I thought that was really interesting. And just as a reminder, the Salisbury student who's being inducted into the Technical School Honor Society, that is happening tomorrow evening.
Great. Do you happen to know what lab that student is in?
It's a female student, and she is a plumbing and heating student.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
Give me your name and number. I need some work done.
Okay.
Yeah, me
I'll see what I
too.
can do.
Me too.
You don't know enough people in that field, George.
No, I don't. At least good ones. All right. Thank you, Sarah. Okay, that takes us to Audrey Frick. Do you have anything regarding PSBA?
Only when I read the legislative report, there was a special report on the 23rd of November that I don't think that we've shared earlier, that the General Assembly in the state finished its work on the state budget, and it includes for education mainly a flat funding for school districts, and it increases it increases the basic education funding to help cover the prior year's shortfall and for the growth that they expect in school employees' Social Security payments. And the last part about it is that it includes two pieces of good news. First, it includes $200 million owed to school district for October for property tax reductions. And then also this spring, the General Assembly has approved a plan to use $300 million in federal CARES funds toward the promised $621 million in tax relief. But there were some, of course, some things that maybe were problems when it comes to the state and how they fund things. So it would be a good read if you wanted to go over to the legislative report and look at this special report on the 23rd.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, appreciate it, Mrs. Frick. Okay.
Janice, I don't know if you can see him on your screen, but Judge Reedman is present, so we may want to go back to 1.3 on the agenda.
Okay, great. Well, we will do that. Okay, we have a special recognition presentation, and that is are the Honorable Judge Reedman, President Judge. We are honored to have him here tonight in order to swear in Ms. Feeney Hetton for her new superintendent role. And welcome, sir, and I appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Mr. Katanis. It's a pleasure for me to do this and a privilege.
Thank you. Too bad it's under these circumstances, but I'll take you in 2D form.
Yeah, well, it is unfortunate, but we're going to get through it.
Yes, we will.
So whenever you're ready to proceed, I'm ready.
Okay, that sounds good. Ms. Feeney Hetton, are you ready?
I am, thank
There
you.
she is. Hi.
Okay, great.
Hi.
Okay.
Well, let me say first before I swear in Ms. Feeney Hetton, I really give you a lot of credit for stepping up and wanting to be a superintendent of a public school system in this day and age. You've got your work cut out for you, but I can't imagine that there's anything more important for the future of our community and our country than to develop our young children. And so I really do wish you well. So if you would
Thank
raise
you.
your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support, obey, and defend
that I will support, obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
and that I will discharge
and that I will discharge
the duties of my office
the duties of my office
with fidelity.
with fidelity.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much, Judge Reibman.
My pleasure. So I will fill out this form, and Mr. Ziegenfuss or Ms. Roddick, there's a return envelope. You want me just to mail it back, or is there some better way that you would like to receive it?
That would be fine by mail.
Okay, great. But the delay of the mail is not going to delay her getting paid, is it?
Yes.
Good point. Good point.
You have to ask the business manager.
All right. Well, again, congratulations, and I wish everybody in the school district and especially the children well. Good luck.
Thank you,
sir.
Judge.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much.
Take care.
Pleasure.
Thank you for being here, Judge. I appreciate it. And
My
have a
pleasure.
good night.
You as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well,
Congratulations, Lynn.
yes,
the best,
congrats.
Lynn.
Congratulations, Lynn.
Yeah.
Yay.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. And Lynn, I know we made the right decision here. You're going to be an asset in the future, just as you already are. And you have the full support of the board, and we'll be behind you because you do have some challenges that you're going to have to face. And we have a lot of confidence in you. So congratulations again.
Thank you very much. George, is it okay if I say a few words at this point?
Certainly.
Great. So most of you know that it's been a career goal for me to become superintendent in Salisbury Township School District. And I started back in the district in the mid-90s, 94, as a middle school teacher in grade 6. I had the opportunity to work as an instructional coach and instructional support teacher, and a short stint as an assistant principal. After that, I moved into central office to develop and implement VAST as a supervisor of instructional practice. I was appointed assistant superintendent, associate superintendent, and now I look forward to assuming this role of superintendent. And throughout my almost 25 years here, I've had the opportunity to really develop as a person, as a teacher, and as a leader. And I've experienced successes and I've made mistakes, and each opportunity that was provided to me was a chance for me to learn and grow while developing relationships with our stakeholders. And as I've said, and some of you have said, we have lot of work to do to rebuild our school community, to improve our school financial picture, and to vision for the future of the district and its facilities. And I look forward to partnering with all of you as the board, the school community, our faculty and staff, our parents, our learners to meet these challenges. So I very much appreciate this opportunity, and I'm looking forward to this next challenge. And with that being said, tonight is Randy's last board meeting, and I'd like to just share a few remarks about that as well. And most of you know that Randy's been with Salisbury for 14 years as Director of Technology, Assistant Superintendent, and Superintendent of Schools. And he started back in 2006 in July. And I was actually on the committee to hire Randy back at that time. The position was for the Director of Data and Technology. And there were a series of interviews, and for the final interview, the candidates had to prepare a presentation for a committee, and it was sort of a take-home task that the participants had to do. And I remember that night thinking, like, Randy is sort of this out of the box and unique thinker. And I don't know, Randy, if you remember, but this actual night, other candidates came in and presented PowerPoint slideshows and sort of what you would expect. And you had this like challenging, complex mind map, concept map that we were not even sure how to read this document. And we knew then that, you're a different thinker and had the opportunity to be a visionary leader. And as all of you are aware, Randy's been so integral to many of the initiatives in the past 12 years. He supported the visioning of the profile of a graduate and the learning beliefs. He led curricular program development, developed and implemented TL 2014 and TL 2020 as assistant superintendent, along with a team of teachers and leaders and staff members. And all of these initiatives, all of his work positioned us well to be more effective in these times of remote learning. And as a result of this work and this collaboration, we've had the infrastructure and the technology that our learners and our staff need. These projects were developed collaboratively as Randy works well with others and values other people's perspectives. He has a unique skill of amplifying other people's strengths and promoting their own personal and professional growth. And one of our team members had the unique experience of working with Randy as a fellow teacher, working with Randy when he was a technology coach in another district, and even now as a fellow administrator. And through all of those scenarios, she reflected on Randy's curiosity about people. He enjoys learning about people and engaging with them in a one-on-one situation. And when you interact, you leave heard. Randy makes sure that you feel your ideas were important and heard and valued. And as a leader, Randy's a learner. He encourages all of us around him to learn more and become better versions of ourselves. He reads voraciously and seeks to share learning with others. And more often than not, there's a new book on my table waiting for me to dive into that Randy had just read and has given me a book talk on my way into work in the morning. He's truly a definition of a reflective practitioner who asks insightful questions and listens attentively before offering his perspective of guidance. He's been a strong leader, an invaluable team member, and a positive mentor. He's dedicated his career to public education, and that certainly has not been an easy task. He's worked diligently. I often joke that he could have an hour or two of work in before I even think about opening my eyes in the morning. And I kid you not, his workday can start at 4:30 in the morning. And yes, that's why he's so chipper on those snow calls. I think we're all going to miss those. And personally, I'm going to miss my critical friend, my chief collaborator, and of course, my valet. And on behalf of the team, I wish Randy the very best as he defines himself and redefines himself in the next stage of his life. He certainly has left his footprints on Salisbury, and we're very grateful for his service. So thank you, Randy.
Really well put, Lynn.
Very nice.
Thanks.
Even though I know he doesn't want this, does anybody else have any comments?
Yes, George, I know Randy says keep this short, and I will. It has been an honor and a privilege to work with Randy. As much as his leadership skills he has, I've learned so much from him. He poise and under stress and everything he has done. He's the kind of person, if you give him some time, he'll make you a better person. And he has done that for me. And I'll miss him immensely.
Yes.
George,
I
I'd like to add my comments.
Go ahead.
Randy, you have brought Salisbury at the time to the 20th century. We were way behind in technology. You got us to where we needed to be and kept us in that, moving in the right direction. I have known you for all of my time on the board, and part of that hiring process for a data processing person. I will miss your friendship. I will miss having your calmness at meetings. And you truly have put Salisbury and Lynn, her assistants as well, the both of you have put Salisbury on the map across the United States. So thank you again for leading our school and being a friend.
So I'll jump in after that if you don't mind. Randy, I will not say that I will miss your friendship because I know that's not going to go away. I know you're the type of person that I definitely want to keep around and keep involved with my life personally, because even aside from the board, in our conversations and discussions, you're always available to offer your opinion or a point of view or a different perspective that I've always valued. I mean, especially when it comes to work regarding the school district, but even more so as a friend outside of the board. Your consultation has always been welcome and very helpful. So I won't say I'm going to miss your friendship because I'm not going away. You're not going to lose me that quick, that easy. But I will miss having you in these meetings to lead and guide and direct us. And also thank you for positioning us with Lynn to kind of like pick up the baton and keep the ball rolling in the right direction. So that you've done a great job of educating the ones around you, lifting them up to take different positions of leadership. And that's a credit because not everybody can do that. So that's definitely something you should take away with you with pride, is how many leaders you've developed throughout the district. So thank you for that. And I'll see you soon.
I'm going to echo a lot of what other people have already said. I've always appreciated your, your unique perspective, your interesting worldview, your positivity for sure. And just like Joe said, like, I'm not going to miss your friendship because I'm not going anywhere. You can't get rid of me. So thank you for everything that you've done for us. I know the many times that we've spoken about issues relating to the district, like I've always appreciated being heard and having my input valued. So thank you for doing that for me and for others. And I wish you the best. I can't wait to find out what the next chapter is. I know it's going to be good.
I wish I would have spoken a little bit earlier because I need to just kind of say same here. But Randy, I just really liked getting to know you, and you made that easy. I can remember calling you about a semi-personal reason a few years ago, and I think we spoke on the phone for 30 minutes, and then you call me back a little bit later for another 30 minutes, and I just appreciate you giving me that time, and it made me feel like my opinion mattered and what I was thinking about had value. So I appreciate appreciate you. How about that? Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to say a few words too. I had the opportunity of working for Randy because I was still employed by the district when he started, and with him out on the board. And like Mary said, him and Lynn, it's the dynamic duo, and it will be hard to take the Randy out of Randy and Lynn because it was always the two of them. But you led us from no technology to one of the first one-on-one initiatives in the Lehigh Valley, and you put us on the map with your speaking engagements and because of your technological ability. And I just want to wish you the best in whatever you're going to do in the future. And we will miss you, and I will miss you. And hopefully we see you often.
And I'd like to echo that as well. I think I was actually at the meeting when they hired you back in the day when my kids were so little, I paid a babysitter to go to school board meetings. So I still can't believe I did that sometimes, but I think I was there when they hired you for that. So best wishes to you. And we're definitely going to miss the teamwork aspect, I think, is we just think of you two together. So I hope you enjoy your retirement, and I'm sure we'll be seeing you around. Yes. Thank you.
Thanks.
It's working with you and just job well done.
Great. Okay, well, I totally agree with everything everybody said, Randy. I was on that board that Becky was referring to needing the babysitter for. I was actually on that board. Then when we hired you, it was, to take care of our IT. It was archaic at the time, and you changed it, and to a point that we've had national recognition regarding your whole process and getting one-on-one and technology up to speed. You, along with Lynn, initiated that, and we all appreciate that. One thing I always admired about you, Randy, you could have arrows slung at you, you could get bashed left and right, and you just you take the high road, and you're always professional, something that I have to learn from, and I think I've been learning that, but nevertheless, the way you act professionally is something that I will follow, and you're actually a role model for me, and I appreciate that. I'll miss you, and like everybody else said, we will stay in contact. Just because we aren't at board meetings together doesn't mean we can't stay to, keep in contact. So I thank you for everything you've done for this district, and consider this a new start for you. So okay.
Thank you. Can I say a few things?
No. No. Yeah, you can.
Even though those who know me know that I am probably about as introverted as they come. So achieving in this role, I've definitely had to build that side of me, and certainly partnering with my pal Lynn, who is the total opposite extrovert. I've certainly learned how to be aware of the context and know when my introvert works and when my introvert doesn't work. And I thought I was going to get away with this, but I guess I'm not. But I am. It's very heartwarming to hear the various things that people say. This is my 34th year in public education, and making that choice, and like all teachers and all educators, we want to make a difference. And it's very heartwarming to hear how people think that you make a difference. So I really do appreciate, with heartfelt sincerity, all of the things that that you shared, and have appreciated my time here. So many of you know that I have probably, and if you don't know, you will know that I have a very unusual 34 years in public education. I was actually an employee in East Penn for 19 years. I taught music at middle school, and then got interested in theater, and then did high school theater, and was involved in starting the Freddie Awards. And then I suddenly became interested in technology, and then I came here. And fortunately, there was a school board then, and many of you were on that school board, and employees like Lynn, who saw something in me and decided to hire me and give me a go, and had the opportunity to be the tech director and the assistant superintendent, and then the superintendent. And I would have never, my introverted self would have never decided or ever thought that I was going to sort of have the pinnacle role in education. But there couldn't have been a better place to do it, with a better group of people, a staff. When I was in the director role, working with people like Lynn, who were also equally curious about how do we change this district, working with a school board that was wanting to be innovative and pioneering at that time in 2006. And then seeing some of that work develop and evolve, and having a superintendent and an assistant superintendent, and Marianne Wright and Louise Boschman at the time, who saw something in me and promoted this work to school boards who saw something in me. And certainly this has been, in the middle of my 15th year here, has been some of the absolutely most rewarding, best time. Even in a most challenging year like 2020, it's how we look at those challenges and how we learn from them. And I am certainly a learner, like Lynn said. I am curious about way too many things. That's my challenge in this retirement era as I look to redefine myself. Is there's just so many things that I want to do, want to try out, want to be curious about. So my first year out is going to really just be focused on figuring out what are those things that I want to focus on. So I do look forward to keeping in touch with all of you and sharing how that journey goes, and hopefully you'll be a part of it. And I value our friendship. I am grateful, so grateful, not only to this board, to previous boards, and to all the staff that I've had the pleasure to work with, to grow with, and to learn with. And one special thank you to my work partner, Lynn. You've certainly helped me grow over the time that I've known you in the entire 14 and a half years here, but certainly in the time that you've been here in central office, helped me to understand leadership, relationships with people, the importance of that, tolerating my crazy ideas, keeping me on track, and being a really good teammate. If you've ever had the opportunity to work professionally with somebody that feels like a marriage partner almost, that has been what it's been like. So I am certainly going to miss you, Lynn, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to have worked and learned with you. Wish you all the best. There's nobody better for this role right now, and always be cheering you on and here to support you if you need it.
Thank you, Randy.
So thank you, everybody, for your kind words, for giving me the chance to say a few words, and happy to move on with the meeting.
Great. Thank you very much, Randy. Okay. That takes, I guess we're about to, I was about to ask Christine if she had a solicitor's report.
No, other than I just want everyone to have a happy and safe holiday season and New Year. It's just around the corner.
Yeah, thank you. You too, Christine. Okay, that takes us to the leadership team report. Dr. Ziegenfuss and Lynn Feeney-Hatton, please.
All right, so Lynn's going to share the screen. And usually at this, for the last 6 months or so, it seems, in these leadership team reports, we've been providing the board and the community with an update on where we are in terms of bringing students back. And we want to share where we are in that process, working with the leadership team, share with you some of the most recent data around the virus, and also data around the surveys that went out most recently. So these first couple slides are similar to what you saw last month, just refreshing your memory and the memory of the community. Administrative recommendations in October, which the board supported, was a scaffolded return to a 5-day face-to-face model, phasing in grades K and 1. Our plan was in November, but then the virus started to pick up and sort of had to modify our plans. And then also looking at grades 2 through 12, staying for the time being in a fully remote model, and working on plans to bring them back ASAP, depending on how the data fares out. So the second slide was also related to the October 14th meeting, and that is to continue the recommendation which the board supported, to continue to modify that plan and offer the fully remote model, which we've been in since the beginning of the year. And we did surveys earlier on, which we shared last month with K through 1. And we want to share the health data. We want to share the survey data for grades 2 through 12 that we have at this point. And we also want to talk about sports tonight as well. So I'll turn it over to Lynn to move on to the most recent data.
Okay, thank you. So this is the most recent data that's published by the state on the early warning monitoring system dashboard that schools are utilizing. And this was as of November 27th. So this past Friday. It's updated every Friday around noon. And as you can see, that's our county data. It's higher than it was last time we shared this information. We're seeing increases in all 3 areas, similar data, just these are the metrics that the state is using. We're still in a substantial county. As you can see, the red here just shows you how far above the metrics we are to indicate that we're still in substantial county. When you're in substantial county, the state recommends the fully remote model. It's just a recommendation. The board can decide to utilize a blended learning model or a face-to-face learning model. This is, as we said, a recommendation. We've now been in substantial. This is the 5th week in substantial, the week ending 11/27. The state recommends staying in the fully remote model until you have 2 weeks in moderate. Again, it's a recommendation. Schools had to fill out an attestation form. This came out last week and was due on the 30th. That form had to be submitted by every district across the state, basically saying you're going to follow the recommendation of being in remote, or you're going to continue face-to-face instruction and sign off that you are utilizing the mitigation efforts. Last time we talked about what our next steps were. We're reviewing the data for grade 2 to 8, determining what it can look like for grades 2 to 8. Can we bring learners back 5 days? Can we bring learners back for the full day for 5 days? We talked about determining the model for SHS learners at the beginning of the second semester. We've been sharing ongoing concerns about cafeteria and lunch space, and also staffing, and looking to identify supports for special education learners. So our building principals, our building leaders have launched surveys. Please note the surveys are not complete at this time, so we don't have all of the information from all of the families. We're sharing with you what we have at this time. Surveys went out prior to our break, and families have received a couple of reminders to complete them. So this is our grade 2 currently as it exists. This is our grade 3 currently as it exists. This is our grade 4, recognizing that the online number is higher than we would like. There are still a couple of families that we're waiting to hear from. So we're still considering that. Grade 5 at the middle school, 5 through 8 is at the middle school. There are, again, outstanding surveys in each of these grade levels. You can see the selections for grade 6. Grade 7. And grade 8. And Mr. Parliament and Mr. Sawicki are looking at those grade level survey results, determining which learners are in Project Wonder, determining what the online learning can look like, which teachers will be assigned to that online learning, and which students will stay in VAS. So they need all of the survey data before they can make any final decisions with that. At the high school, we have 355 respondents. There are 515 approximately total students. So we have a pretty healthy number here, and this shows you what high school students are choosing.
And the last part of the discussion tonight, or presentation, is on winter sports, the update. So there have been meetings over the last couple of weeks with the two health partners within the Lehigh Valley, St. Luke's University Health Network, which is our health partner, as well as Lehigh Valley Health Network. And they have communicated a lot of concerns about their staffing ability to handle the surge that's coming. And one of their main objectives is to find as many portals that can be feeding into that surge as possible and to address them. So they've had conversations with us as superintendents, as athletic directors, to just give us the lay of the land through their lens. And based on that feedback, we're considering or planning to move ahead with reduced winter sports season schedules, similar to mirroring the fall. And then as we get closer to the break, or even during the break, to reconvene, maybe as a group of superintendents within the league, within the county, to figure out best ways to move forward based on the data that's happening across that period. And as if you've been listening to the news, the anticipation is that there's going to be a pretty big upswing coming between now and the end of the year, over the next 5 or 6 weeks. So the competitions that are planned pre-holiday are there. And then there would be a hiatus for roughly 2 weeks after the holiday return to see where we are in terms of statistics to start up again. At the moment, in-season practices are permitted. There's limited contact with focus on strength and conditioning, and mask wearing, making that a requirement that's now come down from Department of Health, that under all circumstances, except if you're a swimmer in the water, you are wearing a mask. And wrestling as well is not obviously wearing masks. So we wanted to put that in here as well before we open it up for any sort of comment or discussion or questions from the board on plans for moving to face-to-face instruction or winter sports.
Randy, can you explain a little bit about the reasoning of the 2-week hiatus at the break? I'm just a little unclear as to, is that just kind of like a point where they're kind of saying, all right, let's reevaluate where we're at. I'm just a little confused as to why such a long break.
Okay, Monica's actually here, so I'm gonna ask Monica to give some more detail into the background of that answer.
The league, as did the East Penn Conference as well, we built in a league mandated shutdown period. We know the holidays are going to get busy. People are coming home, unfortunately, probably mingling more than we'd like. So we wanted to just shut everything down. We're playing a reduced schedule to begin with. So have a window of time where you're not playing any league contests between December 24th and January 10th, 11th. East Penn Conference has a similar one. Might not be the exact same days, may go a couple days beyond or a couple days prior.
Thank you, Monica.
You're welcome.
Does that answer your question, Joe?
Yes, it does. And is this similar to, like, as it was with the fall sports, that if teams want to play outside the league, they're allowed to as well?
Well, we have a few non-league games, and in swimming, we're not in a league. So technically every competition that we have is non-league. And, we don't swim at Kids Peace Broadway anymore. So we practice at Cedar Crest College over at Rodale. So we don't have the ability to have any home meets. So we do have a few nearby non-league games scheduled. And like I said, we have a few swim meets. We don't have many swim meets at all. There's just not a lot. We need to get the minimum.
One other piece of context that I probably failed to mention during the slide is that at this point, we understand that other schools in the league are planning to follow the same scheme. Is that correct, Monica?
Correct. We actually had an athletic directors meeting today, and everybody in the league is started practicing on November 20th. The mask mandate to be wearing all the time, by the way, came down on November 17th. So prior to winter sports starting, to be honest, in some ways, it's made things easier because there's no negotiation. You have to wear the mask all the time unless you're in the pool. And every school, like I said, started practicing that day. And everybody except Moravian Academy is preparing to start play the December 11, 12 weekend, beginning then.
Oh, hang on.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, sorry. You all look frozen for a second. Did I hear you say that wrestlers will not be wearing masks?
No,
I incorrectly stated that. Monica
Oh,
said
okay.
they are.
Okay, good. All right, then I'm good.
Yep.
I was thinking the same thing, Sarah. That's a little close. No mask.
I guess I assumed, how do you do that with a mask on? But whatever.
Well, you have that headgear on as well, so maybe the headgear helps put it.
Oh, okay. Here's what I know.
I would actually be concerned about wearing a mask while wrestling, to be honest with you. I understand the point of it from a COVID standpoint, but from a safety standpoint in regard to your ears, if that it's going to get pulled eventually and it's got to pull on the ear, I would be concerned about that.
Well, if it's any consolation, they're not fans of it. And it's a challenge to keep it on.
It is what it is. I'm just kind of trying to picture how that's going to work.
I think the year 2020 is what it is. Heard that phrase more often this year than ever in my life.
Monica, just a question. When is the next meeting? I mean, when you guys come back on the 14th, and if things go the way that things are going to go, have you guys talked about any contingency of what would be, the next step? Would you actually not play games and just practice? Is there a threshold level, or are you looking for guidance from the state? Considering the focus that we've gotten from our health partners, that they feel things are going to get worse, and they feel all activities has to be monitored or limited, including sports. Is there any discussions in your arena? What would be the next steps? What would be the trigger point if infections got to a certain level or whatnot? Is any discussions of that nature taking place?
Well, as athletic directors, we meet in our league every week. Principals are in every month or so or as needed. So we are going to be evaluating everything week by week and adjust accordingly. I mean, as far as you don't have to play a minimum number of games. If something happens where a team only ends up playing 5 games, they only, for example, Saucon Valley's football team played only 4 football games this season until we played them in that 5th game 2 weeks ago. So there's no penalty for not having played games. Make them up, don't make them up. I mean, although they're saying we're not going to get a bad winter, it just would be like everything else in 2020. So that's going to play a part in it as well. So again, it's day by day. What do they say? A lot of those phrases, day by day, a lot of moving parts, the fluid situation. But we're taking a look at it week by week.
Okay, thank you, Monica.
You're welcome.
Monica, correct me if I'm wrong, but ultimately, everybody has to be on the same page regarding playing or not playing, or you would have a potential for not having somebody to play. I guess what it amounts to is you have a situation that whatever you guys decide as far as athletic directors as a whole, then there's that would limit us as a board in terms of making any kind of decision, correct? Because doesn't everybody have to be on the same page with the decision?
I would say no to that, because in the fall, not everybody was on the same page. We had schools that started participating before league play began. For example, Northwestern Lehigh played a couple football games, so did Notre Dame. Penardsville might have as well. People played games before league play began. So, and the East Penn Conference also has some people, they're not all on the same page. So the answer to that would be no, you don't have to be on the same page.
Okay,
But ultimately, it's a board decision.
got it.
Any other conversation on any of that report that we shared?
Yeah, I just wanted to know, Monica, are Salisbury sports, are we seeing the kind of surge or is it obvious that COVID is worse now? I mean, or have we got ourselves cornered ever where, you know, a bunch of people that have been together playing sports and they all have it or something like that, or even in the league? I haven't heard much, so or it happening, but everything I read says it's happening, but no one is saying where it's happening. So I was just wondering if we're seeing it or if you're hearing any of that.
I mean, knock on as much wood as you can find in your homes. You know, we're in pretty good shape as far as Salisbury. There has been some COVID positives at some of the schools in our league, and they're dealing with it. You know, some of them will be not playing next weekend because they had a delay, and the PIAA requires that you have 15 practices before you can compete. So if you had, you know, either electively chose not to practice over Thanksgiving, or you had a case where you had to shut your program down for a week, you have to get those days in before you compete. So, I mean, it's out there, but to my knowledge, I certainly wouldn't say it's rampant amongst athletic programs. But in my athletic realm, in my world with our league, I haven't heard that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you.
I mean, at this point, what are you looking for from the board, both Randy and Lynn? What is it that you need from us in moving forward regarding sports, at least for right now?
The plan as it's shared, does anybody have any issues with it? Sounds like we're all good moving forward with it. And, you know, that's, I think, any answer to your question, George?
Yeah.
George, I'm comfortable moving forward with it. I just asked Monica to keep in close contact with us and the board, make sure we're up to speed with anything going on.
We'll certainly, you know,
I
regularly.
goes without saying, but I just to reiterate it.
Definitely.
Of course.
Yeah, and I understand, Monica, this is a moving target, and glad to hear you guys looking at week to week, day to day. It's, you know, whatever is pertinent today is not pertinent tomorrow. So thank you for the scrutiny to that, and we look forward to your feedback.
I appreciate that. And, you know, shout out to our athletic trainers and coaches and students and supporters in our St. Luke's, our athletic training people that I try to represent or wrong sleeve, whenever that is, to give them a shout out and everything they do and they provide to us, as well as our sports performance coach. So really deserve the credit there.
And kudos to you, Monica, for always serving as an advocate for your students and for your coaches, and being very amenable and easy to work with, and coming to some resolution on many of these challenging issues that we're facing. So thank you.
I thought it was great, that Monica didn't get caught up in the athletic supporter joke. I was waiting. You said everything but supporter.
She's on mute.
I can't hear you, Monica.
You're on mute.
You still can't. There's something wrong
I
with
still
the
can't hear her.
microphone.
No, she got self-muted. That's why you didn't hear it, Dave.
I mute you, I can unmute you, but unmute you. Now you're supposedly unmuted, but can't hear you, Monica. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
We get the gist.
Thanks, Monica.
I think that's the first time Monica's speechless.
Yeah, I think you're right, Joe. I think
You're right.
What you don't know is I have total control here. I can mute.
Yeah. Something's going on.
I'm really not muting her, but she does have tech issues there.
Okay, so on the sports side, I guess we had that conversation now. Does anybody want to comment on the back to school side?
I'd like to ask a question. Lynn, you mentioned that grades 2 and up, we don't have all the surveys back. Is there a sufficient amount of not returned that would really change what we're looking at?
No, I think elementary is where we have the highest return rate. One of the challenges is, so I believe it's 4th grade. I'd have to go back to the slideshow and look. 4th grade, the numbers are, the number for online learners was very high. So the question is, can you create 2 classes so that it's not as high? So if you have a couple more families who choose online, that could make a big difference. Because we have to remember, we have only enough room in the classrooms to maintain the 6 feet. And if that doesn't work, then the ability to bring kids every day becomes a challenge. And you have to then look at the hybrid.
All right, I was wondering because if it's a large amount who has not responded, what the big effect would be on this, or is it just a matter of a few families and, when is the deadline? We got to keep moving forward. And if they have to choose, you have to know where to put the student, but at what point do we say, this is where you're going to get put? Or can we?
Yeah, I mean, the challenge. I'm sorry, Mary, there's a delay, so I don't intend to interrupt you. The challenge is those numbers that in 4th grade they're so close. They're so close, and we need to have room for all of the kids. And it's ambitious for us to try to do 5-day. Not most places are not doing that. And part of the reason we may be able to do that is because we've had some success with the online, with the Salisbury teacher, and families are opting for that. So the planning is still happening. Mr. Brem is still reaching out to families. He joked that he stopped at a family's house to get a commitment. So he's working on getting those. And as I said, elementary is the place where we have the most responses.
And we're still going with the 2-week notification.
We have committed to giving families 2 weeks notice.
Is that a good time frame? Do they need less time to make arrangements? I don't know.
I'm not sure, Mary. I think we've said 2 weeks notice. At a minimum, I'm not sure if families would be upset if we gave 1 week notice. Maybe they wouldn't be. I'm really not sure.
So just to make it in my mind, are we looking to move forward with the start of 2nd semester to do in person for January?
So we have been committing to that for secondary. We have put the plan on hold for elementary and middle school based on the data, based on the recommendation from the state. The board can tell us we don't want to follow the state recommendation, and we can continue to move forward and set a date. That can be part of this conversation.
Thank you for that, Lynn. And George, if it's all right, I'll just continue with my own personal statement for returning to the classroom.
Yeah, that's fine. Go for it.
Thank you, George. I totally get keeping the idea of keeping our children safe and keeping them home. But from the beginning, I want to see these kids back in school. Kids, data has showed kids are not getting it at school. They're bringing it to school. And I'll just leave it at that. I want our kids returned to in person sooner than later.
Mary, concerning that, what would you be looking for? Would you be looking to hold, like the earliest possible time, if we hold that 2 weeks, is like the middle of December, which is immediately before, the Christmas break. Is that what you'd be looking for, or after, like, starting in January?
To be honest with you, I have thought about 2 different scenarios. And we sort of had this talk about the extended holiday time last year. Bring them back, let them get it out of their system, get any kinks out, see where we're at, let them get used to it, and they have the holiday break. The other scenario that's running through my head, and Monica alluded to it, folks are going to be getting together. You're really going to try not to. They're still going to be together. I've seen other organizations, state and schools, that because of that possibility with large number gatherings, that 2-week time frame, that mid-January date, is because they're looking at, here's Christmas, here's New Year's, here's the 14-day guideline, although now yesterday got reduced to 10 days, that takes you past that time frame. So January 10th, 12th, whatever a Monday would be, is a good time to go back. I want to see them back in the classroom. Is it back for a week and they get it all worked out, parents get it worked out, kids get it worked out, teachers get it worked out, and then they have a break? I'm good. If it's set, no matter what, January 12th, 11th, put them back. They need to get back in the classroom.
Okay. Thank you, Mary. Anybody else?
I have a
Carol?
comment.
Good, Carol.
I would like to see us continue moving forward with at least KN1. All the kinks, you should have enough data right now. The parents should have had time to figure out what they're going to do, daycare wise and whatever. I would really like to see us try to get KN1 back before Christmas. And then we could move forward with like scaffolding the rest back in, going through January or starting the 10th. That would give us a chance to see how it would go with kindergarten and first. I mean, if you gave them 2 weeks notice at this point, you're talking, oh, I'm in 2021. I think you're talking like the 16th, or no, 14th would be a little less than 2 weeks notice for kindergarten and first. That way we could get our feet wet a little bit and see how it goes before the break. But I think we need to start putting dates out there so people can start planning moving forward. But I agree with Mary, we have to get these kids back in school. It doesn't seem to be other districts, they're back in school. Yes, they're taking a break 2 weeks after, the holidays, but they're in school. They might take a week break and they go right back. And there is no reason we can't do the same. Yes, the consistency is a question, but everyone else is living with it, and so could we.
Okay. Thank you, Carol. Sam, did you have your hand up, or?
Yes. And first and foremost, I understand Mary's and Carol's position. I respect it. Myself personally, I think as long as we're in the substantial realm and the guidance from the state is to go remote, and considering that COVID is growing exponentially right now, it couldn't be the worst possible time to decide to put kids back into school and put them on bus and take them all around and have them intermix with teachers and administrators and custodial workers and everybody else that goes into that building. So I thoroughly agree, and I have no qualms with they're not getting an equal education in person and that they are not learning at the same level. Although the PSB put out that the testing on math and English was equivalent and that they saw no reduction in that. So I keep deferring to safety and saying that the number one thing that we have to focus upon is the safety of those children and everyone that's in our charge, the teachers, the administrators, the support staff, bus drivers, everybody that goes there. And I just don't see at this point in time being the right time to do that. I would like to set a date sometime in January or a time frame to work towards that. And depending on if we can get out of the substantial phase and seeing us starting to ebb as opposed to things increasing, because I just think we will be in and out numerous times back and forth. And I don't know if that's better or that's worse. All I know is the evidence that we've seen that people have not been a fan of on again and off again. I know other districts are doing that, and I think we err to the right side. That's my humble opinion. Whatever is the will of the board, I'll support. But I think at this point in time, it's the wrong potential time to get kids back into the classroom. With all that's going on around us, ignoring the St. Luke's health report, everything they put in there, and their guidance not to do this. So with those pieces of information, I vote, or my focus is to stay with remote until we get out of the substantial part of the COVID pandemic, because safety is the only thing at the end of the day. Once one of our teachers, one of our students, or one administrator gets sick, that's my 2 cents worth.
Okay, thank you, Sam. Okay, would anybody else like?
Yeah, I'd like to just compliment what Sam has said. Safety is the priority, and when we're seeing, like, when you read in the newspaper, it seems like every day there's a record number of cases now. Each day it just gets larger and larger. And please don't get me wrong. I mean, I want my kids back in school as soon as possible, but that's as soon as possible as I feel that it's safe for not only the kids but for the community. And I just feel right now, yes, I do think we should try to target a date, whether that's insubstantial or not insubstantial, sometime in January. If we could try to like we did before with November, I think it was November 16th, we gave ourselves a target. Did we have to adjust that target? Absolutely. And we can adjust that target either way. But I think putting us back now before the holidays might set us up to fail in a way that might be counterproductive to education, families' lives, the whole 9 yards. And the end game here is to try and get kids back in school as quickly as possible. We just need to make sure that we are doing it in the safest way possible. That's my 2 cents. And that's how I would vote with the board.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Okay, Becky, you're raising your hand.
Raise my hand. Yeah, I also agree with Sam and Joe. And I mean, I feel like I also want the kids back in the building, absolutely. And I understand that kids are not the number one level of spread. But I saw, on 69 News the other night, Dr. Jari, I think it is, from St. Luke's Health Network, absolutely pleading with people here to not gather at Thanksgiving. I mean, I know I personally didn't. My parents lived 2 doors away. We didn't even eat together because we have my husband who's in and out. We're trying our best to listen to what they're saying. With the numbers exploding, I just feel like this is a public health issue. We have to listen to the public health experts. I just think it's it's an unfortunate timing that it's all exploding right now. But I feel like if we're not going to follow that substantial spread level, then what else aren't we going to follow? Like, how are we going to decide when we close buildings? Are we going to, change that guidance too? Are we going to listen to what PD says about that? I think it opens up a lot of issues potentially. I don't know what the right answer is either, but I just feel like this, I want to listen to the science. I want to keep people safe. I think it's our responsibility also to the community to not spread it, to not have people coming in and out of the buildings that are creating that spread when you're hearing the opposite from the public health experts.
Mhm.
That's how I see it.
Okay, thank you, Becky. Okay, we have David, Audrey, and Sarah yet. Any one of you three would like to make a comment?
I'll make a comment, and then mine's going to be quick. I like the idea of agreeing on a date, a goal date. And I liked Mary's thought. I think she had said January 10th or 11th. I'm not looking at a calendar to know what kind of day of the week that is, but that fits with the sports. One thing with me is I can't, it's hard to justify agreeing that the kids need the sports and can play the sports, but we can't ask them to be in the building, so I'd like us to have a date in mind, and I'd like us to have and have I want us to have a defined reason or a defined thought process when we make the decision to send more than the K and 1 back to school, and or what is the defined thought process when we have to pull kids out of the school, like Becky had said, with what numbers have to be hit before we end up pulling kids back out. I want to compliment us. I think we've been doing a good job making our decisions so far. I really do. It's very complicated to me. And, I often can see both sides. I can see all sides of this argument. It really makes a lot of sense to me that we've made a good thought process so far. We've done a good job making decisions, and let's stick with it and give ourselves a goal, but not before Christmas. That would be very difficult. In January makes best sense to me.
If I can just jump in and clarify something. If you are moving to an in-person model, you have to comply with the mask order, and you must comply with the recommendation when you have to close the school, when you have identified cases. We have to follow that. That's not discretionary if you are doing it in person.
Right. Well, the mask rule, definitely I knew. And I don't think I know the rule for the number of cases identified. So
it's laid out in a chart by PD.
Okay,
so
okay.
it's going to vary.
We could share that again so people
Sure.
can, yeah.
Okay, Sarah?
Sure. I don't know that I have anything new to contribute. I am in agreement with us picking dates in January, early February to send kids back. I think it would be foolish to put kids back in the building in December, and maybe, we could, I don't know how many grade levels we're committing to dates for, but that, excuse me, that like January 12th date for kindergarten, first grade, and a targeted group of special ed students. And then maybe like the next 2 grades, maybe like, oh my gosh, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, and 5th grade, 6th grade come back 2 weeks later. I know we talked about that second marking or end of the second marking period date for high school. Yeah, I mean, I think the important thing to consider is that I feel like that report or the statement that came out from the CDC like a week or 2 ago saying that school is the safest place for kids, like that very well may be, but our kids don't go to school alone. They are in that building with adults, and we have to consider the safety of everyone in our buildings when we decide to send our kids back. So, we just have to keep our eyes on the data and make the best decisions that we can.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Mr. Hattinger?
I think everything pretty much has been said. I don't think I don't argue with anyone who thinks the kids shouldn't be back in school. That is for the reason of it being the best place for them to learn. The big issue now is, when is it safe to get them back in school? And I would in so far, in all the times I've seen, this is probably, unfortunately, seems like the worst time to put them in because of everything that's coming down. Even though I can't personally attest to all of it, I've been reading a lot of it, and it seems like the places that are the kids are in school, the schooling is going well. I just don't know how all the other stuff is going at home, or there people sick at home, or they're, we don't know that, and we don't make a decision based on that. But I'm like others concerned about the people, all the people in the school, not just the children. And we lose one teacher, and there's 20, 30 students that were being taught with that. We have to find someone else to try to, and we know that with the little kids, it affects them even more if they lose a teacher that they're used to. So I believe the little kids would be probably the best ones to put in first, because I think they're the ones we can control the most. And I don't mean that in a negative sense. I mean, I think if we make them wear masks, they'll wear masks and stuff like that. The older ones are going to find ways around it. So it would be a lot harder to do that. So I think we need to, I like the idea of picking a date, and everything is still fluid. I don't think there's any doubt we need to get them back in school as soon as we can, and as soon as it's safe. And right now it doesn't seem like the best time to do that. And they're saying the next 5-6 weeks, from everything that we've been seeing, is this surge, even though we've been in it for about 5 or 6 weeks already, from what I've seen from the data. But if it continues to go the way it is going, yeah, it probably is not the best time to do it. And probably January, whatever, would be the first that we could do it. It would be nice to have a date like January 2nd, so that the people coming out of after Christmas and that know the kids are going back to school. For one thing that Carol said that I didn't even think about, so the parents can plan, that the kids are going to be back in school, and they don't have to, run around in 2 weeks. Right now, they really still don't know when it's going to be, and it may be a surprise to them when it comes up. I don't know. But so I think, like most have felt, that it's probably not the best time to do it yet. So.
Okay, thank you, David. All right, I'll chime in with my thoughts. I'm running down a list here I just jotted down, and I just like to bring them up. I guess, as we've said before, the federal CDC has stated that the safest place for the students is in the classroom. But one thing we have to keep in mind, as somebody said, it might have been Sarah, we have to concern ourselves with the adults in the building also. Now, that being said, I haven't heard of any transmission from the kids to the parents. So, and we've had numerous COVID, quote unquote, experts at a national level stating the same. There haven't been significant outbreaks in our area, with districts that are back full time. And what I'm concerned about is the students socially and emotionally. That's a real problem. Now, you have these scientists, they're concerned about the issue of potential, spread and things of that sort. But I think a lot of them are ignoring the fact that, these kids staying home is something that could be affecting them emotionally for years to come. And I'm really concerned about that. We know that's happening, and it seems as if the so-called experts are looking at that not quite as strongly as they are relative to the potential catching of COVID. And I'm worried about the special needs students. That's a major issue with me. I'm really concerned about that, because they just aren't getting it relative to the same that they would be getting in terms of face-to-face learning. as far as if we would open, needless to say, if we see a spread, we immediately hit that switch and shut it off. And as far as this decision we have to make, it's not a decision to say, hey, they have to go back. The important thing is letting the parents making that decision. And, in other words, we aren't going to have a hold the gun to their heads and say, hey, you're going back. If people don't feel comfortable with their kids going back, they just don't go back. But that's how I feel about that. But in terms of time frame, I think it would be too much of a rush, and there's too much of a surge right now to do something before Christmas. It would have to be sometime in January. So that's my take on it. So I think everybody did chime in regarding this, but at this point, do we just continue? I'm referring to Randy and Lynn here. What do we do at this point? Do you keep on monitoring the situation and at the same time continue getting feedback from the parents? What do we do in the meantime here?
Can I have one question here? Somebody typed into the chat about whether what our thoughts were, and maybe that's something we should address. If we were going to go back, if we would wait until the spread is in the moderate level, or if that's a factor, that may be something else to think about. So maybe throw that into the mix. I'm just saying if we're going to clarify what we're doing for parents so that they have some idea as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And I think it directly connects to setting a date. We can certainly set a date, and we can certainly push that date off. We can certainly stick with that date. And the question of substantial moderate does play into that date. Is the will of the board going to be, we don't care when we're in substantial if we hit that date. If we're still in substantial, we still want to go back. Is the will of the board going to be, we want to wait until we hit the recommended time of moderate? We don't know how long we'll be in substantial. We don't know when we'll go back to moderate. We know that we have families who really want their learners back in school. We know that we have families who, at this point are asking, why are we considering bringing kids back in school? And we have everything in between. We have leaders who are developing plans. We have to be prepared to move forward whichever way we choose to move forward. So I think that's a question for the board of, what's the comfort level of following the recommendation of the state or not following the recommendation.
Yeah, Lynn, I think you bring up a good point, and I guess that's one thing we could, poll the board and see what the will is. Would we be willing to go back when the spread rate is still substantial, or do we need it moderate? Because it starts, or what you're asking for, and I guess I'd see the panelists is what is going to be our trigger? Are we just going to set a date and say January 12th, that comes, we're going back no matter what it is? Are we going to use some kind of guidelines to give, the public a feel for what something's going to happen? Or what are we going to use as our measuring stick that is the trigger? So it's a good question. And I think that's the fundamental thing the board has to ask itself. What do we feel? And then the will of the board rules that. And if it's, no, we say January 12th or whatever that Monday date is, and we're going to start with K through 1, and we're going to do that regardless of the recommendations from the state, then that's what we do. Or do we go by the substantial and the moderate level? We won't consider in person until it hits moderate. And that's a guideline that everybody can follow and find. So maybe that's the first question we have to ask ourselves to move forward to set up these parameters and make a decision. And I just throw that out there as a question to the board, because I think that's what you're asking. And I think what I see from the panelists, what they're asking is what are going to be our triggers to go forward with that.
Yes. right now, I personally feel, I don't think there'd be any objection to shooting for, let's say, the middle of January. And if we see any drastic changes between now and then, we do so and at least still leave the 2 weeks notice. What's everybody's feeling regarding that?
Should we set this up as separate issues? Like, decision number one, at this point, we're going to, yes or no, if we're going to go forward before things get out of substantial? Try to set that parameter and then separate it out. I'm not sure what the best way to do it is.
I have a question. If you're listening to the science, they don't feel that we're going to see this surge go down until maybe April, March at the earliest. So with that in mind, we may not get out of substantial till March or April. Then what? Are we going to bring the kids back then? Or are we just going to say, well, it's too late, can't bring them back into school? Because the numbers were down in like August, and they never took us out of moderate. They just left us there. So then what?
And that's based on, like, it's a percentage, it's a number. It's not like a judgment call, right? It's like a percentage of cases that determine like the level, moderate, substantial, right?
Yes. If I understand that correctly, is that correct, Lynn?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, there's a chart. The chart's there, and there's two factors that you
I
look
can
at.
show you the chart. I'll pull it up while you're.
Yeah,
talking.
that'd be nice, Lynn.
It's just going to take me a moment to find it. So if you want to keep talking, I'll find it for you.
Well, I think Becky brought up a point. I think we talked about it. I mean, the first prism we need to go through is, and Carol brought up a good point too. It could be until March. Do we feel comfortable, yay or nay, of bringing students back when we're still in the substantial category, or do we have to wait until moderate to do that? And that's something I think once you answer that, then you can set a date, but if it doesn't move, then you keep punting the date until you do. Or you say, we don't care about substantial, January 15th, or whatever the date is, mid-January, that's when we're gonna start bringing kids back and go from there. I mean, it's the yin or the yang, and whatever the will of the board is, the will of the board is. So I think there's two prisms we have to go through. And the first question is what do we feel about this right here, the moderate, low, and the recommendations? Right now, we're in the substantial, and the state is saying you should say fully remote, although a lot of school districts are not following that guidance. But, I don't know what they're doing and how they're, and they're a hybrid, or what they're doing, how they're getting it done. I mean, you talked about desks not being 6 foot apart, but now they all had to say they are, and enhanced cleaning and the mask all day. Okay, you have to do all that to stay under their legal umbrella, or you lose that guidance from the state and that defense. So I think this is the first decision, and then we can set the second decision.
Well, and if we make the decision now, there's nothing to say we can't change it.
No, there is.
We can set that parameter now and then, see how it plays out. Like, what does substantial spread look like at the end of this year,
Right. It could be trending downward. It could be going, in the right direction, and we feel comfortable. But, I guess, and if we're not prepared to make that decision, then we just want to say, okay, we're going to pick a time frame in January. We're going to have to come back to this again, and eventually we'll have to answer this question. I mean, we can wait and see what shows up. I mean, I guess our next meeting would be early January, Lynn. We have operations or something January.
I think it's January 13th. Let me check my calendar.
Yeah,
It is. It's January 13th.
that's the next meeting we get together. There's nothing before then.
Well,
Nothing.
you can always meet earlier too.
We could.
Yeah, we're going to have to do that. Yeah. All right.
I mean,
What would prevent us? Sorry, Joe.
That's right. I'll offer my 2 cents on this. The terminology between low, moderate, and substantial, I mean, and the recommendations for it have come from people who do work in the field of science and study this information and the benefits of going one way or the other way. My personal opinion is I would not send them back unless we were in the moderate. There's people out there that have made recommendations, whether it's within PDE or in other healthcare arenas that are giving us this information. I have a hard time ignoring it. So that would be my personal opinion, would be to follow the recommendations based on the numbers.
Okay, Joe, that being said, how would you feel about setting a tentative date in January to shoot for? And if we have to meet, if we see things getting better or, well, worse, I should say, things getting worse in the meantime, we reconvene. And how much notice, Mike, how much notice do we need relative to notifying the public in terms of days?
For what, for a meeting?
Yes, if we have to have an additional meeting, say, the beginning of January.
Usually we should give a week, but depending on what the reason for the meeting, if it's an emergency, like if you scheduled kids to go back and you had to cancel it because of that, it's a shorter time period. Let me double check the exact requirement.
I mean, George, you could set a date and work towards it. But again, I would not feel comfortable sending them on said date, whatever that date was, unless we were in the moderate.
Right, I understand that, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure if, that's your opinion. I'm not sure if everybody feels that way. That's all I'm saying.
I agree. I'm just sharing my 2 cents.
No, I understand.
Yeah, George, I concur with Joe. I feel the same way. I don't feel comfortable sending kids back while we're still in the substantial category. I'd wanted to go to the moderate, and so I concur with him.
Now, that being said, directing this to whoever feels that way, what's your thought relative to the fact that, hey, if the parents don't feel comfortable with it, they don't send their kids back? That's what's driving my opinion, because just because we're saying, hey, we're gonna open, we're still giving the parents that option.
Yeah, we're giving the parents that option, but we're not giving our teachers, and we're not getting our administrators, and we're not giving our support staff, and we're not giving everybody else that goes into that building a choice. Many of them would have to show up, and they would have to be there. So that's the concern I have, is everybody that has to come into that building. I know it's the children as well, and they're part of my concern as well. But that's everybody that has to go into that building is where I would feel a concern for, that have to add to the spread and show up during a substantial time of the pandemic. And I, that's just what I feel, and I understand, and I respect your decision and Mary's decision and Carol's. They're very good ones, very passionate ones. And there's 2 sides of the coin. You have to choose which one rings your heart more and which one you feel more aligned to. And right now, I'm aligned to safety. And I think that's the paramount thing that we have to deliver. And for me, that trumps, as I know, the education part. And there's people that feel strongly the other way, and I respect that decision.
Mm-hmm.
Special meeting, you need 24 hours, at least 24 hours public notice. It is not public notice is not required in the case of an emergency meeting or a conference. I'd have to do a little research as to what emergency means.
Yeah, George, it's 24 hours notice in a publication, and for our issues with getting it in the paper, usually takes a couple days. That's why I say usually try to give a week's notice, but yeah, it's 24 hours of actual publication notice before the meeting.
Yeah, understood.
And I'd like to echo what Sam was saying. I mean, again, I just feel like we have St. Luke's as our health partner. We have the PDE that's listening to public health experts. It just reminds me of when my kids were little and I'd call the doctor and ask a question. And then I'd say to my husband, well, do you think that's the right call? He said, look, either we believe this doctor or we don't, and we fire him and we get another one, but we didn't go to medical school, you know? And I feel like we're, you know, it's a health issue. None of us on this board ever thought we'd be dealing with so much of this epidemiology and virology and all those things. I should have paid more attention in biology class apparently, but I just feel like it seems I would love to stick to the guidelines that we're hearing from the health network. I mean, like I said, I heard this doctor from St. Luke's Health begging people to try not to get together at Thanksgiving. I mean, I look at this as like our time to sacrifice. We've had it, frankly, pretty easy in my lifetime. And, you know, we didn't go through World War II. We didn't go through rationing. My husband was in the Navy. He used to deploy for 6 months at a time. He missed all kinds of holidays. This is sort of our time to do those sorts of things and not, you know, not be out doing, you know, being at gatherings we shouldn't be to help everybody else stay safe. And I just feel like I hate to put our kids into the situation when it's undersubstantial. I really want them back in the classroom. I really do. And hopefully if we all do what we need to do, it'll happen sooner than later and we can get back into moderate and then talk about a date. But I like the idea of putting a date on the calendar, but I agree with Sam. I would just like to not follow through with it if we're still insubstantial at that point, which hopefully we won't be.
No, I hear all of you and I do understand your point of view regarding that, but again, I've done some pretty significant investigation and I specifically looked for cases of teachers and staff catching it from students, and I'm just not finding it. And I'm just strictly going with the science also. And there's more to just these doctors being concerned about the COVID itself. There are other factors that I'm thinking aren't really being looked at by them. Just the impact on the kids not being there, the impact could be long-term impact on them not being at school. And also I'm concerned about at what point, how long does this get drawn out before we end up saying, hey, what do we do regarding the entire year? And those are the things that are running through my mind. I don't want to make it sound like I'm cold and I'm not worried about staff, but I'm just going by the information I'm looking up and I'm just not seeing it.
George, I'd like to add more to my comments and listening to my fellow board members. And as I started my statement, you know, like I get it for the safety of everyone. And I am concerned about staff. And we may end up with a change because if staff gets involved and we may have to change a classroom. Right now we have a lot of what ifs. What if this keeps going? What if we have staff? What if parents want to change their mind and switch from person to online? You know, before a semester, are we going to reevaluate and let them choose differently? This is like a moving target. I'm concerned about everyone, and as I mentioned, to get them back as soon as we can. And I think the first step is we need to give a date. If we have to give 2 weeks notice, we're looking at Christmas time to give them the notice. There's Monday is January 11th. Just as we do now, we had November 16th. It didn't work. We had to move it. I think we need to set in motion a date with the possibility the beginning of January. We have to move it. But I think parents, staff, administration, they need a date to move towards. And I am concerned about special needs kids. That's one of my huge passions with the IU. And, you know, that school is in a different circumstance that they can stay day to day in person because of the number in the classroom. But it's not easy. It's extremely difficult with special needs. And we just really need to keep the faith and move towards getting these children back and having everyone safe. And I think we start with a date and get it published and get it out there. And if it has to move, it might have to move. But fingers crossed, it gets better, it stays status quo. If you can't send your children back, then numbers may change and we have to relook at that, but I think we need a date. And is it January 11th? Is it January 18th? I don't know.
Okay, so ultimately what it amounts to is everybody in agreement with establishing a tentative date? Then before that date, we have the option of changing it through possibly another meeting. How's everybody feel about that?
I think we should have a meeting scheduled for the beginning of January. Can we just do that now and go ahead and make another meeting? And, when we look at the trend, I'm really having a hard time making a decision when we don't know the facts, and that's hard. So we're shooting for the middle of January to start the kids, but let's go ahead and schedule the meeting now, beginning of January, and look at the facts at that time.
Yeah, George, just talking out loud, if we go with the 18th, it'll give us time to meet the first week of January and have more data at that time to make a decision if we go with that or we punt. And that'll be, almost a month from now, 4 weeks into the 5-week surge. And maybe the board at that time have better clarity, as Audrey's pointed out, to be able to make have more data to make a decision if we punt that date or stay with it. What do you think about that, George?
I like that idea. How's everybody else feel?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Okay. All right, now shall we try setting a meeting date?
So just to clarify before we move on, we're looking, Sam put on the table January 18th as setting that as a tentative date. I believe that's an in-service date. So setting the 19th as a tentative date, is that the
Okay.
will of the board at this time?
That's fine with me.
Yep, yes. Thumbs up, or is everybody good with that?
Okay, now the harder part. Can we reach a consensus on a day that everybody can make it? How's the 6th look?
Let me look real quick.
I will be in town, George, on the 6th.
You will be, you said?
Yes, of course I'll be in town. I'm not leaving town.
All right.
6 is good with me, George.
6 is good.
Okay.
So that will be a special board meeting for the purpose of discussing return to school.
Yes.
Correct.
So that's how we'll publicize it.
Yep. So, but you won't be there, Randy.
Only in spirit, only in spirit.
I will.
Don't
You can
cry.
you can call in. We'll send you the link.
Sure.
Yeah, you could be a spectator even though you don't live in the township.
Oh my goodness.
You do get to make a public comment all you want. Don't worry.
What time are you going to start the meeting? Because it's a special meeting, so you can start it.
How about 7, all right with everybody?
Yes.
Okay.
Sure.
I have a question.
George,
To be a
George, I
little,
would like to know some of the information like you were bringing up about the schools in that meeting. Because I agree, I think probably the safest place for the kids to be is in school. That these percentages are probably the worst that we're going to see, and we're seeing it because these are people who aren't following the rules and the distancing things and things like that, and that's why we've got these numbers. Whereas in school, the kids are pretty much regimental, especially the younger ones, and following all the rules, staying 6 feet apart, all these other things. They're less likely to get it in the first place, even if someone there does have it, because they are being kept apart and using masks and everything else. And it's outside of there where they're more likely to get it. So I think if we can get any kind of info to show that it's actually better for them to be there, then whether there's a surge or not may not matter and may not affect the decision at all. Because we may be putting them in the safe and teachers and that in the safest place for them to be. Okay.
Yeah, I guess the question there is, where's the best place to look? I mean, I've been doing investigating, but I'm not sure how dependable it is. Lynn, might you have access to some of that information, you think, that we might not know about?
I'm not sure exactly what information Dave is looking for. Are you looking for medical research or what are you looking
No,
for?
I'm looking for what's actually going on in the schools, the people that are in schools, how
In
many
our local county
are the
schools.
teachers getting it, or yeah, especially locally, yeah. And how does we can then determine how does that relate to the numbers we're seeing on the outside? I mean, if there are 5 people in the Salisbury schools that get it out of 20,000, 25,000 people living in the area, that's a pretty small percentage. And that means being in the school would be the safer place to be. So we're looking for anything to help us make decisions here. And we're making decisions on things that none of us feel good about. And we're like, percentages can always be manipulated, and they are for whatever purpose somebody wants them to be used for. I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm just saying that they're identifying probably the worst part of this, which is the people who aren't doing the things they're supposed to, or the ones who are most likely to get sick. So we know that the kids aren't the ones most likely to get sick. And if we put them in a place where they're even safer, it would be a lot easier to make that decision and maybe even feel better about having the teachers come, because maybe we'll see that they're safer at work too. I don't know. There's probably not enough data yet gathered.
Yeah.
For this
And
kind
the
of
other thing,
thing,
the
but
other thing too,
anything would help.
the only, no, well, I disagree with that point, Dave. And just from the mere point that is, you have to be cautious as to where data is coming from. So we have to be vigilant as to when we see if it's coming from a reliable source or whatnot. I don't know which articles are being referred to here right now, but I mean, when information is coming
I'm
in,
not referring to any articles, Joe. I'm just talking about, I said, I don't know. Every time I ask the schools, I see a couple of things, but I'm not seeing schools that have been closed because they have 30 kids who have COVID. I've seen a school closed because they have 1 kid who has COVID. I live right next to one. So, I mean, and that's a private school, and they decided to close for 1 child. But 1 child, if that's the only child that they ever come in contact with that has COVID, that's probably not a bad deal in the way things are going. I just looking for more information on to make a decision and give it to the parents to let them decide what they want to, where they feel their children are the safest.
Lynn, one idea, building what Dave is saying, make it simple for you. I think we get data, or you get data, and you've sent it on to us of what's going on in each county or school district and the general population, and just look at that versus what's being reported for teachers, students, administrators, staff, everybody that works at that district, and see how that percentage differs from the population. And, you know, are they safer there? Are they the same? Is it a higher? And if we could just look at that and some snapshots as the next 4 weeks roll out until we get to our meeting on the 6th, maybe that be some data that would concur or disprove or whatever. And they would have to be populations that either have a hybrid or are full in person. And then look at them and see what the occurrence is and how much they mask the general pop.
So just to be clear, to give you what you're asking for, reaching out to local districts, determining their number of students.
Yep.
And their number of staff and how many cases they've had.
Right.
And are we looking at positive cases only? Are we looking at people tested? Are we looking at quarantines? I mean, honestly, I don't know what a school district is going to release to us. They're not.
Positive cases.
positive cases.
'Cause that's what I'm measuring in the spread is the positive cases, right? Is that the data we get for the general? And I try to make it
In
easy
the
as-
spread,
Yeah,
yeah, it doesn't help you with, staffing concerns or concerns about classrooms that can't be covered if there are people just who have to get quarantined, but it
Right.
does give you obviously the number of cases.
yes, yes. I give you one parameter, at least something more that maybe gives us helps us with a decision point. Because I agree with you. I mean, if you lose 2, 3 teachers and some key people, it's going to be challenging to run a school. And it's not going to be the same school these people think they're going to because, and can you get a substitute? What do? You really get into critical staffing concerns. But at least it's another point that Dave's asking for. And I think other board members could use that just to take a look at to help them understand their decision. And I see Carol nodding her head, probably information she'd like to have as well.
Yep.
It's not
So
too
no problem.
difficult.
We'll
I
reach
don't
out
want
to
to
other
give you,
districts and see what-
a thesis thing to work on. I want to make it as simplistic as possible for you.
Yeah, guy, I
Yeah,
just
we'll
hear
reach out to other
a few
districts.
rumors. I hear, one kid in this one school had it, 2 kids in this other school had it. And yeah, that's what I like, that verified, more detailed, accurate information with surrounding districts.
And Lynn, I guess the
Okay.
slide you guys put up on sports, there was a whole bunch of sports. Were they all positive cases of students? On that one slide you put up?
No, those
I'm
were a
not
number
sure
of
what you're referencing.
contests. Those weren't cases.
Oh, they're just contests, the number, okay. I didn't,
Number of scheduled competitions.
oh, they're competition, okay, thank you. My misunderstanding. I didn't know what that was.
I have a question. Now you gave a target date of January 18th. Who are you thinking? Kindergarten and first that date? Just so parents have some sort of an idea. You didn't specify grades or anything.
Is that me? I didn't specify.
Right, you just said it targeted date of January 18th. Who are you thinking of bringing back at that point, tentatively?
Yeah, I mean, I think we try to bring back as many of our K-8 learners as we can. If we start with K1 and the following week, bring back 2 through 8. We've been talking about second semester for secondary. So the second semester, I believe, would be the following week.
Okay.
So I think it makes sense to start with K1 and, if it's for a few days or a week and then increase.
And just for clarity, it's the 19th, correct?
Yes, it's the 19th.
Correct.
Yeah, the 18th in service.
That's right, 19th.
And I guess you have off on the 25th, or when's Martin Luther King Day again?
18th.
That's the in service.
Oh, okay. All right, so that's the direction we're heading in. And Lynn, do you have all the information, all the questions we have relative to what you're going to try and gather for us?
Yeah, absolutely. Most of this, we've certainly seen the letters that other districts have sent and have been tracking it. There are not an exorbitant number of cases in districts. It varies even school by school. So, we can certainly present that information.
Yeah, whatever you could get will be a help. Okay.
I have another
Okay.
question, Lynn. Do you have a recommendation as an administrative team of what you would do now, or do you just want to let it sit with the board discussion?
I would suggest let's take this. I would like our team to take this discussion and move forward on it.
Sounds good.
Flush it out. But you've given us some parameters.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Okay, do you, Randy or Lynn, do you have anything in addition that you'd like to add?
No.
Relative to your leadership team report? Nothing?
Nope.
Okay, thank you.
No, not at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any new business from the board?
I'll just say one thing. Last night I sat in on a webinar from Pennsylvania School Board Association, which is available, I think, to everybody here. That was really interesting, one on roles and responsibilities. There were lots of interesting points, but one of the things I always, whenever I go to things and hear about other districts, I think we should be thankful for what we have here. Because, one of the discussions was about how, for example, how you set up the boardroom. And even though I haven't been on the board when we're in an actual room, I do remember how it's set up. And it's, the table, and it's some of the districts, apparently they talk about the team of 10, which is the 9 school board directors and then the administrator, superintendent. And often I guess there's sort of an adversarial situation there, and they'll set the administrators off to the side or with the teachers or whatever. And we don't ever do that. Everybody's included. And that was just something they pointed out as a new tactic. And I thought, wow, that's great. We already do that. I don't feel like there's that sort of tension in between us. And I think we should be commended for that, because I think it's always been that way as long as I've been going to school board meetings, which I think is when Randy was hired there. So I think that's great. And I think it's always nice to hear that we are not in a situation that a lot of boards are, where it's always, some sort of competition between the two aspects. So I'm grateful for that.
Yes, we've had some tough decisions to make, and I'm proud to be on this board. We don't always agree, but we're respectful to one another, and that's the important thing. So, and secondly, Becky, thanks for looking at that. Thanks for going to that seminar, webinar, whatever it was. But I think all of us can use some of that. Even people like me that've been on the board for a while, sometimes you forget how things should be run and what should be said, what shouldn't be said relative to executive session or in a public meeting, what should not be done relative to email and things of that sort. I think it'd be a good reminder for all of us to keep that in mind, that we don't want to break any laws here.
I think they might be repeating it again next week or in the near future. If you guys want to check the website, it's available to anybody. So
yeah, I think that's a good idea. Again, thank you. Okay, any other new business? Okay, that takes us to citizens' inquiries and comments. Mr. Taylor, do we have anybody?
At this point, we have Laura McKelvey.
Okay.
Put the headphones in your head.
Thanks, Chris.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, Laura.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't think they can hear me, Chris.
No, we
We
can
can
hear
hear
you.
We can hear you. You might not hear us.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm at Chris's house, so we're kind of trying to figure it out. Okay, I just wanted to make a few comments. First of all, I wanted to respond to Mr. Hattinger's comment. I work at Lehigh Christian, which is, I assume, is the school he was talking about that shut down for one case. That's actually not quite true. What they actually did, there was a case in the high school, and they put the high school at home for 2 days. And then when a couple other cases came out, they extended that to a week. But that's basically the only closure that they've had the entire time. And they have been 5 days full in person at LCA, which, as you know, is within Salisbury School District. So for the entirety of the fall, they've had high school out for 1 week. And that is all they've had to do in terms of closures. Secondly, I wanted to say that I really admire Mrs. Deeb. She is so assertive and advocates so well for the students under her care. She's always professional and polite, and does a good job representing those that are in her charge. And I am extremely disappointed that academics are not advocated for in the same way. You once again are allowing athletes to play and practice, get physicals in the school building. And my son hasn't had therapy that is mandated in his IEP since March. And let me tell you that every single hour he has missed, Salisbury is going to make up, whether they have to people over the summer or not. And in fact, I've been told by Mrs. Jacoby that it's likely he will have to go in to get those hours made up over the summer. And if we go on vacation, I may have to forfeit some of those hours because they can't accommodate for that. So I am furious that once again, this board has decided to prioritize athletics over academics. And it's not just, why can't the athletes practice via Zoom? Their coach can Zoom and they can just do the stuff at home like my kids are supposed to do for gym. I think it's ridiculous. I think it shows where your priorities are, and they're not for the needs of the littlest learners, the ones with special needs, and anybody else who's struggling online. My daughter is suffering from probably clinical depression from being at home. But and in fact, while I was sitting here, I got an email from the middle school about mental health resources, none of which are actually provided by Salisbury. They're all through third parties, right? I have a son who isn't getting his therapy. And then I have a first grader who hasn't had a full year of school yet and who's expected to be learning the same online. Okay, these kids aren't even necessarily sitting in school. They're turning off their videos. My daughter was just in a breakout room the other day with a friend of hers and another child that she doesn't know as well. During the entirety of the breakout session, that child didn't have their video on and didn't say a word. Do you think she was actually in that breakout room? I don't think she was. And who is accounting for that? No one. You are failing our students. And you say that you want to wait until we're in moderate. Do you realize that the turnover from moderate to substantial is actually half the number of cases that it was to go from yellow to green? So when we moved to green, we were still in substantial spread. And that's the guideline that you want to use to determine whether we should go back or not. We won't ever go back. And in fact, I think there's a lot of people saying they don't believe Salisbury ever wants to go back, that has been the plan all along. I don't know why we feel that is appropriate when we feel free to disregard all of the health recommendations when it comes to athletics. So you're picking and choosing to prioritize a bunch of students that are already given privilege and money and resources. And then my kids don't have any of that benefit. They're stuck at home in our house on Zoom in a school that isn't theirs because you closed it, with a whole bunch of kids they don't know and they can't get to know well because you're keeping them at home. Every other district in the county, aside from Allentown, is in school except for us. You want to know what Salisbury's reputation is? It's the reputation that we can't keep our act together and that we are failing our students. That is the reputation. I am embarrassed to live in this district. And I know that I have plenty of friends whose kids are in Parkland who are in East Penn, and we're the ones that are getting made fun of because of your poor choices. We have no money. We have to close a school. We have to lay off a bunch of teachers. And now we can't even educate our kids to the same level that every other district in the county is doing. It is humiliating to live here. I am just disgusted that this is what the board is continuing to do. Thank you.
We have Russell Landy next.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm Russell Landy. I live at 2255 South Ellsworth Street here in Salisbury Township. I speak at great risk because I am new to the education field and I do have aspirations to somehow break into a teaching position. So this is sort of like the election. You choose a side, but whatever side you choose, it's very controversial. COVID is probably the next controversial thing that's going on in our society right now. And you can obviously see that even in the board meeting. So that being said, I will just say that I respect the board's decision wholeheartedly that they're looking out for the safety of the children. But if you really mean that and you're going to stick to your guns, then realistically speaking, and you know, it's no secret that this is going to go on for a while, 2022 would be realistic when we can get everybody back into school. But that's not realistic. But if you want to stick to your guns and say, look, we're looking out for the safety of the kids, then that's what you would have to do, is wait until 2022. And that would be not a good idea, obviously, based upon, you heard what the last resident said. We talk about listening to experts. On the board, I heard many board members saying, let's listen to the experts. Let's read the paper because they're going to be true and honest in all these things that are being published. Well, I would recommend to the board, there's a school district that's 5 miles away. I could probably walk to it from my house and it would take me maybe an hour. It's called Saucon Valley School District. Saucon Valley School District tomorrow celebrates their 70th day. Of their 70th day in school, only 4 of those days were virtual. That's because they closed after Thanksgiving because of the pressure provided, and understandable, and I don't begrudge them. But the point is that would mean that for 69 days of the school year or thereabouts, or in the 60s, they were open face to face, the elementary school from K all the way to 8th. So if you're saying, why don't we ask the experts? Why don't we go talk to people who are in the field? How is it that nobody has gone to Dr. Butler in the Saucon Valley School District and said, Dr. Butler, how are you doing it? How are you able to educate the children in this district where 80% of you have chosen to have your children in our school face-to-face? How? So my suggestion would be, if you want to ask experts, ask Dr. Butler in Saucon Valley. It's 5 miles away. I'm sure he would be very happy to explain how he's able to do it. And I can tell you this, Dr. Butler follows CDC guidelines to a T. The second thing is that it works, and it can work, but it can only work with the cooperation of everybody who's all in. And I will say lastly, that if you look at the numbers, and they were on the screen real fast here, it almost seems like about 75 to 80% of the respondents in the elementary level have opted to have face-to-face 5 days. So if that's the case, then you being elected officials, aren't you supposed to oblige your constituency? And if they're saying, we understand the risks, we read the paper, we see the news, we speak to health experts or see the expert information that's out there, and we are choosing to have our children face to face. And the others that choose not to, that's their prerogative. So my thing is kind of, if all the board is saying, well, in my opinion this, and in my opinion that, well, what about the opinion of 80+% or 70+% of the people in Salisbury that say, we want our kids back face to face? So look, I don't really want to put myself in the middle, but apparently I have just by speaking out. But I'll say one last thing. I believe the teachers in Salisbury are doing the best that they can. They are trying so hard to be able to make this virtual happen. It is not easy. It's not what the public thinks, that when you go in and you teach virtual, that it's a piece of cake. These teachers are not having a fun time doing this. And I really believe that if they could, they'd like to teach in the schools face to face. So I will just say that we have to look at the whole thing all together and say that there's hardships all around, but ultimately the board makes the decision. And I will say that I love my child's teacher. She's in 5th grade. She's doing an awesome job. But what is my child going to do to get a job when she is the best player of Roblox in the entire county? My child can play Roblox so well because she's done so early. You can only do so much on virtual, no matter how good the teacher is. And it's doing a disservice to my child and everybody else's, and all the hardships that are created by having to be home or have somebody home. When the cure is worse than the disease, then what's the point? Thank you very much.
Mr. Gatanis, there's nobody else signed up at this point.
Okay, thank you. All right, so that takes us to upcoming meetings. Other than the one we just scheduled, we have one January 13th at 6. That would be a regular board meeting, starting with the executive session. A regular board meeting will start following an operations meeting. And we have a curriculum meeting on January 25th. With that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Take care. Have a good holidays.
Thank you again, Randy.
Happy
Holidays.
Thank you.
Randy.
Hey,
Has a good
enjoy-
Bye,
holiday.
Randy.
Bye, Randy.
Hope the public has a good holiday and hope the board.
Okay.
Well, thanks
True.
so much.
Yeah.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.